think aggression is a much more open game plan than it was prior to those two. The mid-range decks were really getting shut down, I think, by the looming power that Mage was going to hold. And when you take Giggling Inventor out and open up that window for mid-range decks to really be there, it makes, to me, sort of a natural fit that Mana Worm moves up in that cost. And I think that's one of the big struggles that we've been seeing with players is where do the aggressive lineups sit when you're going to build one at this point? You have 2 or 3 like really quality aggressive decks, and you take a look at a deck like Odd Paladin. Odd Paladin's one of those decks that's like, it's much more about fighting against decks like Odd Rogue that are out there. SeoHyun in this one, it feels like every single time we see SeoHyun, he is just on top of the standings. He's always got a good record. And I remember in Oakland talking about that one again, that Tarei won. We criticized SeoHyun's play as being perhaps too timid in a lot of spots. But I have to say, at the last time I saw him play at playoffs and where he almost qualified for champs there, he looked so much better in his matches on camera than he did, I think, at Oakland.
Yeah, SeoHyun, if anyone that's talked to anyone that knows SeoHyun, you know that he is an absolute prodigy on control decks. And I think, unfortunately, when an expansion just drops or a nerf happens, control kind of struggles just because control is better when you know what you're controlling against. Yeah. And when the meta hasn't necessarily been solved, proactive strategies like Odd Rogue and more aggressive decks like Zoo do a lot better.
Yeah, like Shutterwalk, I think, is like one of the prime examples I think of when I look at control decks right now. It's got a defined game plan of things it wants to do. It wants to have the checklist of minions off, where you get your Sayer Night Chain Gangs, you get a Life Drinker in there, you get Grumble in there, and Shutterwalk is your ultimate endgame plan. It plays a control role where it just really doesn't do anything except try to squelch the oncoming assault using Lightning Storms, Volcanoes, Healing Rains, etc. And that really, I think, is one of the reasons that we've seen Shutterwalk come to this tournament. Players expected aggressive decks. They didn't really know quite what exactly they were bringing, and so they went with something that's a bit more rounded in its end-game plan to be able to tackle these styles of decks. Volcano Lightning Storm are pretty much going to be good if your opponent's trying to attack you with minions.
Shutterwalk Shaman, is it good or is it bad? Been pretty decisive today. It's been a kind of an even 50-50 split on everyone I've talked to.
Well, that to me is the testament of a deck like that, too, is control decks, they need to bring certain tools to tackle these sorts of things. It's very generic tools that are inside Shutterwalk Shaman, and while it can beat aggressive decks, it doesn't always decisively do so. It needs particular tools to get the job done, and those tools don't always show up. And when they don't, that's really when those decks really tend to struggle. So I'm looking at it, just feels like one of those decks that's pretty good right now. Almost like a safe pick, I'd say.
Yeah. And this Shutterwalk also taking a little bit of a deviation from what we've seen from traditionalists. We've only seen one Alkalite of Pain, and we see Hemet making a comeback. Hemet kind of fell by the wayside a lot of times just because sometimes it destroyed, lightning strikes. It destroyed healing rains. It destroyed all your removal and heal, which is what you need to get to that final combo. So even though you were drawing all your combo pieces, you were just dead.
Yeah. I think it's like one of those picks where it makes a lot of sense to include in the deck. We saw Language Hacker win the Fall Championships with Hemet in his Shutterwalk build. And one of the things to really think about is if the control decks aren't really defined, they don't know what tools they need to bring, and you expect a lot of Shutterwalk decks to show up, that's a great time that Hemet gets included in that deck. It accelerates you towards finding that checklist and getting Shutterwalk online before your opponent can perhaps find those tools. So in the mirror match, for instance, or against Odd Warrior, being able to access those that much sooner, I think increases your win rate a lot because of that one single inclusion.
Definitely situational. Light Warden, Fungal Enchanter, Doomguard, buffed up by the Prince Keleseth. Tarei actually on his end of his curve is also running one Despicable Dreadlord. And so I think that's just a nod to probably thinking that, like I said, when a nerf happens, when an expansion drops, aggro becomes a little more prevalent just because proactive strategies tend to do well in undefined metas. And so Despicable Dreadlord, I think, is just a nod to that. Really good in the Zoo Mirror, really good against Odd Paladin, which we've seen to have a good amount of success today.
It's like one of those things that we saw with the Doomguard and the Leroy being trimmed to the one copy of instead. When you trimmed to one copy of Doomguard, a lot of the thought was, well, why not just run Leroy at that point? Like, it's just a bigger attack thing at the end of the day. I only have one copy of this, so...
And it doesn't discard Soulfire.
Yeah, I'm not really getting punished for having it. And so that was really the thought, was that Zoo was fairly strong against a lot of aggressive decks. You just had, really resilient early minions. You had explosivity onto the board. Despicable Dreadlord was doing a great job of mopping up stuff like Odd Paladin, which got pushed out at championships completely because of the fear of of Zoo and decks that were going to prey on Paladin in that situation. And you take a look at the way that it shifted right afterwards. You needed to fight Giggling Inventor before. Now they're trimming down back to the one Despicable Dreadlord. And when they have that extra open slot, they go, wow, why don't I swap back over to Doomguards and run 2 of those? Fight for board in an efficient way because you expect a bit more mid-rangey stuff to come in. Looking at this game in particular, I feel like Tarei is really at a big lead because of Keleseth. It's just going to make all of SeoHyun's turns that much more difficult. Like, instead of having clean lightning storms, he's got to risk them. Instead of having volcanoes that are perfect, sometimes you're 2 points off. Keleseth, it very clearly is a powerful ability by itself, but it's really when you put it in context that I think it matters the most. In situations where your opponent needs their tools to line up a certain way, it disrupts that.
Yeah, and here's definitely where the Shutterwalk suffers the most. The Lightning Storm getting buffed by the spell power, fortunately. Even gets the 4. Yeah, I was about to say this is definitely where it struggles if he does not get to that spell power, just because it's really hard to find an answer. But
yeah, without the spell power totem here, granted he's 33%.
Yeah.
Tarei could have limited that down to 25. I don't think he's necessarily right to do so. He's looking at the healing totem, he's looking at Light Warden, he's looking at Despicable Dreadlord, and he's going, I can farm this Light Warden to be so big. Every time the healing totem ticks on a minion, it's going to be extra attack on the Light Warden at that point. Like, that is a lot of attack you get from 1 mana, and it prompts action from your opponent. So Tarei in this one ended up taking a risk by not clearing it off. It doesn't pay off, and then suddenly he finds himself behind. So in this turn, where he ends up drawing Soulfire and he has Doomguard, if this was an unbuffed Voodoo Doctor, I imagine he would consider risking the Soulfire here. Because he needs a way to contest Mana Tide, but he needs a way to deliver damage. But he also needs a way to get something important on board. And here, just, again, the extra ticks of damage, SeoHyun would normally be at 12 in this situation, so he's at 10. So, like, just everything becomes a 3. It's like this weird compounding issue. Yeah. I really don't know how to explain it other than using too many words. And I sound like an idiot, Will. Why don't you stop me?
Healing Rain. That's good.
You came off a long set, man. That last one was so crazy watching them get to the end of that game with like the Mechathune craziness.
Oh, yeah. That was just, it went on for hours. And, like, everyone downstairs was like, what's taking so long? And they look over at the stage and they're like, wait, that would have been real good.
So is that a way for Tarei to get back into this one? I'm looking at the Sarnate Chain Gang in SeoHyun's hand. That's a lot of damage, but I'm looking at Chain Gang, looking at Healing Rain.
Here's another
Look at Mind Control Tech.
Ooh! Gets the 50-50. Here's another thing that the Despicable Dreadlord actually does on the board is by doing 1 damage to all these totems, it actually lowers the how efficient Healing Rain is because it's going to heal up all these totems. Yeah.
Good point.
And so that's going to be 3 less or more now, but before the Dreadlord died.
We have now reached the, nigh inevitable territory where Tarei is going to chain together a bunch of string of, broken up minion curves and SeoHyun's going to take over. I mean, with Hagatha in hand, Healing Rain in hand. I'm sure he's 9, he's 5, but this is looking pretty in the books. SeoHyun has gotten massive control over the tempo of this game.
Yeah, I was about to start talking about how the totems might be a liability, but that extra spell power did a whole lot of work, cleared off the board.
It's that Hagatha.
Yeah, Hagatha as well as it's going to clear off the board. Doomguard, Steel, that's a lot of damage that was denied. Healing Rain coming down before. Does he want to keep this Doomguard alive?
Well, I think he does, and it would have stayed alive this turn, but I think SeoHyun's just in a different game plan. Like, he's now altered an alternate game plan mode, where Shutterwalk can win via purely its control tools. This is I wouldn't say it's a common occurrence versus aggressive decks, but it's not really an uncommon occurrence either. You picture the way that Druid wins against a lot of aggressive decks. You just kind of run them out of stuff. And Shaman is also very good at that. When your opponent has a detailed minion game plan and all of your spells line up to kill stuff a lot of times, you can just take that route, and it's pretty darn safe.
That was something me and Bob were talking about earlier in the day, is how do you classify Shutterwalk Shaman? Because some people consider it a combo deck because of Shutterwalk, but other times it plays just like a mid-range deck. It just plays minions, and it just beats them down.
It reminds me a lot of like Old Freeze Mage, where Old Freeze Mage could play a control route. Like when Antique Healbot was in Standard, and they had 16 extra life from there, plus they had the ice barriers, and you had to use Archmage and Tinnitus a lot of times. That deck could just play a slower role and actually run some people out of gas. It didn't always have to have crazy burst combos to win. That's a lot of how the Shutterwalk deck reminds me of that, where it's this game plan where you just simply squelch the assault from your opponent, and eventually your cards tend to take over. You don't have to Shutterwalk somebody, but it's there if you need it in the slow matchups.
Yeah, there are some times where you don't even have the combo completed, but it sometimes just makes 2 copies of itself and deals 6 damage and heals you for 6.
Yeah.
And if I told you about a 9-mana card that gave you 18 stats, dealt 6 damage, and healed you for 6, you would say, wow, that's an incredible card. Why aren't you playing it right now?
That's an incredible card, Will. Why aren't you playing it right now?
Because I'm so focused on the combo that I don't underestimate how crazy this card is just on its own.
It's pretty darn crazy, and Tarei's been out of cards for a long time. I wish there was more to say, but really the window of opportunity sailed, and the mind control attack on a Doomguard was brutal.
Yeah. Definitely the seal in the coffin. Sometimes mind control tech just gets you there.
Ooh,
that's pretty good. Draw 3 cards.
Well, I wonder if this was the turn to play it or if Chain Gang was enough here. Those are 3 pretty good ones to draw.
You got to play them all.
But, I'm looking at Volcano, looking at Beaker Lightning. If the board got just out of control stats-wise, the Beaker Lightning softens that, and you Volcano. So a lot of overload on SeoHyun's side, but really it just continues to be a matter of motions. And here, just gonna Shutterwalk so I'm totally safe.
And the Hagatha is going to clear off most of the board. The Happy Ghoul is going to live, but at this point, it doesn't matter. You got the Earthshock to finish it off. If you really want to. In game 1, going over to SeoHyun.
Yeah, pretty standard, straightforward Zoo versus Shutterwalk game. Tarei's window of opportunity sailed, wasn't able to deliver a lethal blow, and that's pretty much it. You go all in and you hope it works out.
Yeah, we've seen that pretty standard throughout the day with the aggressive versus the control. We have stuff like Odd Rogue, which plays Mira's Unstable Element, trying to get that last bit of damage just to do that one final hump that they have to get over to get there.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get your Cold Bloods, and sometimes you don't. And in this scenario, sometimes your Doomguard doesn't get stolen, and sometimes it does.
It's like a Mounds Almond Joy commercial. Sometimes you get your Cold Bloods, sometimes you don't.
Almond Joy, hit us up.
Only 90s kids will get this. Dang it, I'm old. I can't help it. That's how time works.
Time. Dang you. Tarei going down.
You saw him get nervous all the time. It was like, I don't think it really affected his play too much, but occasionally there was just that one momentary lapse of judgment where Tarei would just go, oops, did the worst thing possible this turn. Well, I'll lose this game and then I'll win the series anyway. He's just a very good player, but I'd say like in the last year or so, Tarei has had this grand sense of maturity about it, where I saw an interview with him where he talks about his first Worlds performance he was at. Boasts the title of one of the few players, getting close to that second World Championship appearance. And he's like, I think I just really took my first World Championship appearance for granted. I didn't really think that much of it, and I didn't take it very seriously. And it was like right when he started to have those realizations, you started to see a different Tarei. He's very focused in on the game. He has moments where you could tell that he's getting a bit nervous on stage, but he just takes a deep breath and he calms himself down. And just hearing him talk about that growth over the next, the last couple of years, it was just such a cool story to see, where it was before, just transition from someone who didn't really care, someone who cared too much, and now he's right at that sweet spot. He's very focused in and just a hardworking player.
He's found that perfect middle ground Goldilocks. Not too hot, not too cold, right in the middle. And, that growth shows. He's, a sponsored player with Team Endemic, who are doing incredibly well in the points. He's along with, Killing All Day and Swaggy G. And he won Oakland. So he's doing great.
Started getting titles again. SeoHyun representing Kyoto Esports for quite a while now.
Yeah, he's one of the first players on the team who was officially sponsored by them, and he stuck with them. And, he's been with them through the highs and lows.
Uh-oh. One of these players hates to see that.
With a Firefly to activate the SI agent, but if you do that, there's just a chance the SI agent dies.
Yeah, at this turn, I think it's definitely just lead off with clearing the Spider Bomb. And then how does Tarei get control of this game? Right now, this is where SeoHyun's tools are just lining up very strong. But that's not necessarily guaranteed to last. Flanking Strike right in this Vicious Fledgling. He's got a lot to disrupt that early pressure and try to fight back against Tarei. But the thing about it is Odd Rogue does not slow down for a pretty considerable amount of time. And so considering that, SeoHyun still got a pretty good hand, but he's going to need a little bit of extra help. He's really going to get through this right now. Again, minions getting cleared off. Tarei's about to redevelop, and with Vile Spine behind that. The one big thing to look at is that Tarei did draw the worst card in the deck right now, which was the Baku.
Yeah.
Almost anything else would have given him a lot of push potential over the next couple turns. And instead, SeoHyun is looking like he may be able to climb into this one because of one weak turn.
Yeah, I believe Bob referred to Baku as fat patches, where you just hate to draw it, but you can't even play it.
Thick patches, as I once heard Sottle say.
With 2 C's.
Yeah, thick patches. And that's really what it is. It's got to be in there.
Yeah.
Dang, you hate drawing it.
And also with the last turn, it just shows how fortunate it is that the Spider Bomb landed on the Henge Clan Thug, because a 4/4 is outside the range of the flanking strike. Wouldn't have been able to clear off the Henge Clan Thug. It would have been running rampant and would have been real far behind, but fortunately for SeoHyun, hit the Henge Clan Thug. Now Tarei is he's playing a tempo cube.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is SeoHyun tries to capitalize on Tarei's weak turn, and this might be the one turn, I think, that you're not supposed to do it. Tarei does need to have Vile Spine here, and so when the risk succeeds for SeoHyun, he is miles ahead in the game. But when it fails, you're just looking at it and you're like,
boy, does it fail.
And you're like, oh no. Anything but that. Like, this was and as soon as he sees the Firefly.
Shaking the head. Yeah, you just see how.
You know the activator's there.
Yep.
And honestly, that's, a little bit of bluff potential that Tarei has. Even without having Vile Spine in hand, just hanging on to that 1/2 always puts that doubt in SeoHyun's mind. And so this time he decided, had to take the risk, doesn't get the payoff for it, but does draw Witchwood Grizzly. So there is benefits even to that big turn happening, as right as I say it, of course. But but this is the thing. If you force your opponent to use the tool, oftentimes it opens you up to some of the best cards in your deck being able to come out and then restabilize defense or offense for that matter. That is, pretty much what had just happened in the Tarei draws the second Vile Spine.
Yeah, we could go on a long trade about, when one door closes, another one opens, and Witchwood Grizzly is going to come down as a 3/10 because of how few cards Tarei has.
Look, when luck shuts the door, you got to open up the window, all right?
And then Vile Spine off the top. That Grizzly's dead.
Yeah, that window has now just been, got the iron bars.
They boarded up the house. You're under house arrest. This Grizzly's not doing anything.
Well, Tarei does flip the board in this situation.
I love it.
Well, I'm quite surprised by it, honestly, because it makes the egg a 4/1.
This guy's. But it's going to have to go through this Tar Creeper anyway.
No, it's not.
Never mind. Ignore everything I'm saying. He can choose to swing in, but that makes a 5/5, and that's better than a 4/1.
Yeah, I think at this juncture, I'm probably pushing 2 damage. The thing about it is Tarei's looking at Vile Spine Slayer in hand. What's he going to draw?
Activator.
That activates that. If it's a 3-cost card, you're not having a dagger next turn. So is that 2 damage worth it? If it's a 1-cost card, you're pretty much going to dagger up and play Baku the next turn. You come out in about the same situation. At this point, a 5+ cost card is the worst thing in Tarei's deck. So if he draws anything that costs less than 5, I think he's got a really clean shot of winning this game. But it needs to be something that costs less than 5, and it needs to be right about now.
He has 10 cards in the deck that cost 1.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that's Deadly Poisons, Cold Bloods, Second Firefly, Dire Mole, Crystallizer. There are so many cards he can draw.
Any of the 3s work.
Even any of the 3s. If you include those, that's about 60% of the deck.
Henge Clan Thug.
Another
Void Ripper.
Vicious Fledgling. SI Agent. So many good cards.
How many cards do you have that cost 5 or more?
Well, you already drew the Baku.
Yep.
So we have Captain Greenskin, 2 Fungal Mancers, and Myra's Unstable Element and Leroy Jenkins.
Don't want to see those.
Oh!
Well, it is Fungalmancer, though.
Still good.
Still gets through the board. Now, this is a much more painful way to get through the board for Tarei. But it does leave you with very big minions in play, and you just saw SeoHyun float 2 of his mana. He's been pretty darn weak on a lot of the turns so far, so Tarei's getting an idea of what's in hand. The big one he's thinking about, of course, is Katharina. That's if that one comes down, Tarei still could be in a bit of trouble here, but he maintains a Vile Spine, so trade off. Push some damage, call it a day.
Also putting the Fungal Mancer in between the Flame Elemental and the Void Ripper to get exact damage. So rather than leaving up the 2/1 and having 2 5/1s, which would play right into Rexar, chooses to leave up the 3/3.
Also consideration for Mind Control tech.
Also, yeah.
Yeah.
Which has been pretty consistently very good this tournament.
Yeah, it's been, this was kind of a weird looking play from Tarei because he could have left a lot more stats on board, but it's a risk versus reward thing. In Tarei's mind, when this succeeds, he's in very good shape, and there's no doubt about that. It's when it fails, that's when Tarei ends up in bad shape. And so he's just trying to prevent that failure, and then if something does go awry, yeah, you still have Cold Bloods, you still have Leroy.
So this is the part of the game where the players who do very well with the hand tracking tend to do a lot better than the players who choose not to, because this King Crush has been sitting in the hand for quite some time.
Yeah, it's not Katharina, because Katharina was not played on an 8-mana turn.
And it's likely not a Death Rattle activator because he would have used it on the Spider Bomb or the Egg in the previous turn.
Right.
And so if you make the read that is King Crush, you need to kill off the high main so you don't just die. Because surprisingly, this Odd Rogue has gotten fairly low despite having been so aggressive and having board control. Next thing you know, Tarei's at 15 health.
Well, that's what happens when you tank a bunch of damage, kill off minions.
Yeah. So the King Crush, I do not believe has been buffed by a Keleseth or anything like that. So that is just an 8/8. So it's going to be just shy of lethal.
That being said, I think that SeoHyun does live this turn. Oh, no, he doesn't because it's a 3/3. Okay, so locked out of the game in that spot. Really close to recovery, though.
So close. And that just goes to show the power of the Death Rattle Hunter is because, you have stuff like the King Crush, you have Katharina, which can just pull out these huge... Yeah. And so I'm looking at the Hunter list right now, and there is not any sort of thing like the Devil Sword, which we've been talking about. There's been a lot of contention in the pro community over that last B slot. What do you put in for the
Charge Devil Sword?
We're on the same team with that, Admirable, but
glad.
It's Savannah Highmane, the original Dr. Six, the OG of Classic, where you played it and you just felt good. It's just not that good anymore.
You know what, Will? Savannah Highmane sucks.
You heard it here first.
Honestly, it's a pretty good card, but I just don't think that in Death Rattle Hunter it's suiting really what the purpose of that 4th beast slot is. You look at Katharina and you take a look at the big 3. The 2 Witchwood Grizzlies, the King Crush. All of them have defensive capacity the turn they happen. The King Crush can attack minions. The Witchwood Grizzlies are 3/12 taunts.
Oh, yeah.
If that 4th beast is a Savannah Highmane, what that means is 25% of the time you pull a beast, it is not capable of defensive measures that turn. And I think that's a really big deal. I agree that Charged Devil Sword is on a whole a worse card than Savannah Highmane, but when you take a look at how the deck operates and how important the Katharina turn is, a lot of times you want defensive capability, and if you don't have it, you lose the game. So I think that the Charged Devil Sword is superior in that manner because it offers you that potential, as well as it offers you the upside of securing 7 damage. The Death Rattle on a Savannah Highmane is relevant because it allows you to continue to push. The Charged Devil Sword does that the turn it comes into play. So I think in that slot it is superior to be Charged Devil Sword.
Yeah, that's a really good point you made about the defensive capabilities immediately, because in a situation where you were to pull a Savannah Highmane off Katharina and you win anyway, you were probably winning that game anyway.
Yeah. Now, in this game, I wanted to talk about what was going on, but SeoHyun just pretty much got beat up in this one. It's early Keleseth. It's a lot of 1-cost minions, and his defense is Spider Bomb.
Yeah, I look to my right to talk to you. I look back to my left, and there's just a board of minions.
Yeah, welcome to Zoo. One of the players is playing animals, the other one is not. We call one of them Zoo, not the one with animals. But I digress.
Gluttonous Ooze for tempo. Not exactly what he wants to be doing. Soul Infusion on a Fungal Enchanter.
In SeoHyun's spot, this is how the Hunter lives and dies, right? It tries to just get anything on board, and you want one big disruption turn. Flanking Strike's really that mechanism. When you don't have Flanking Strike against this deck, it is way tougher. When you don't have a Candle Shot Hunter's Mark for an early minion, when you don't have stuff rolling your way, you just get beat up.
But
if you want to beat Death Rattle Hunter, this is how you do it. Play aggressive stuff and hit him really quick. Or play Odd Paladin, that works too.
But one of the best cards out of the Dr. Boom set, Ziliax, making its way into almost every single deck. Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It's quite good.
That's the only thing I can think of. And so Tarei in this spot has one question. Do I trade Keleseth because of Rexar? No, I have a ton of damage on board. Yeah, but honestly, if he had traded it, he'd be in good shape still.
Still being good. To be fair, he's still in great shape. He's going to fish 8 damage this turn. He still has another Soulfire. Doomguard's lethal. What I was going to say is Ziliax has kind of made its way into basically every single deck, even if they're not running the mech package, just because of how solid it is.
Oh, yeah.
Gives a lot of game against decks like the Zoo, but not so good in that scenario.
Yeah, I actually can't think of a single person who said that Ziliax was not going to be played except Boar Control.
Really?
And I'm calling him out on that one. Yeah, I said it, Boar. I'm sorry I called you out on that one. You're a fantastic player, and honestly, you've done pretty darn well the last year or so for yourself. I don't know why I fired shot at him for that. I really don't.
He said Ziliax was bad. He deserved it.
He was skeptical. Rightfully so. It honestly just kind of looks really innocuous. Like just the 3/2 Divine Shield Lifesteal Rush thing.
It's like you see the 5 mana and you see the 3/2 and you're like, what's going on here?
But what I remember seeing 6 mana in Argent Commander to 4/2 and going, wow, that thing's really good. When you attach Taunt and Lifesteal to it, it becomes pretty darn good.
For 1 less mana.
And 1 less attack.
Must be preserved.
I'm taking that trade.
Look, 1 mana for 1 attack is not a very good deal. I need health attached to that as well. That's why if Firefly was a 1/0, it wouldn't be very good.
It would just die when you played it.
Yeah.
Tarei on the Malagos Druid. Pretty much a staple today. But SeoHyun switching it up a little bit. Taunt Druid.
Yeah.
I really like that choice as well, just because, especially if you think everyone's going to be bringing the Malagos Druid, Taunt Druid just does a whole lot of work against it.
It really does, and its armor total is a little bit higher than some of the other decks that are out there. And one of the reasons why is because Oaken Summons is a card you get to play early on. You don't get to play Ultimate Infestation until way later in the game. And so once you get to that point where there's all these dangerous combinations of damage possible, it's really tough to have these colossal turns of armor. Ultimate Infestation provides a lot in long term, but Oaken Summons does provide a little bit more, and it happens early on. So they get out of your hand. And I think that's really one of the big factors that makes Taunt Druid a strong matchup sometimes versus Malagos, is that you get to a big armor total, and you have lots of ways to make more Taunt minions. It's tough for Tarei to really push through that without a quick jump into an Alex Drowsa Malagos combo.
That's another thing I want to talk about is just Oaken Summons Ironwind Golem. That kind of fell off the wayside because Flibidinous Floop came out and we're like, wait, that can be a Hydronox for 4 mana. I can just play a Flibidinous Floop as a Hydronox and then cube it in the same turn?
Yeah,
Count me in.
You don't need to do that.
That's just kind of overkill.
Yeah. Well, it's good, but
oh boy, was it fun.
Oaken Summons is in my opinion, quite a poor choice unless you are playing almost specifically Taunt Druid. Token Druid is, starting to see it rotate back because of Violet Teacher and the like, but honestly, like, Oaken Summons is kind of a weird card for Druid to play. It takes up a lot of slots in an already fairly tight list, but a deck like Taunt Druid, it works perfectly in. Taunt Druid, you get the taunt stuff in there, and then you go, okay, now how do I get to this point?
Yep.
You look up at a hand with Hadronox, Sleepy Dragon, Ultimate Infestation. How do you live that long? Well, the answer is Oaken Summons. Good card.
It's hard, and also thins your deck. So you're not drawing the Ironwood Golem, you get to draw your good stuff quicker.
Check that one on my caster bingo. Mentions deck thinning.
It's just $1.
Well, I mean,
you didn't yell bingo.
Well, I just drew. It's 5 in a row, Will. That's a bingo. That's how you say it, right?
That's a bingo.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
That's amore.
You sicken me.
The Italian in
low-hanging fruit jokes.
If we didn't go for the low-hanging fruit, we wouldn't appreciate it when we strove for the stars.
That's a true story. I'm pretty sure it was Einstein who said that.
Albert?
Now Frederick.
Upgraded Spellstone. Hearthstone!
Honestly, this is a really tough turn for SeoHyun. His hand is extremely heavy at this point. Once he uses Master Oakheart here, he's only going to be getting 4/8s from the Dragon Summons. That's a way big difference than the 4/12. The 4/12 is the one you want to get, not the 4/8. And so when I take a look at how this game's progressing and where we end up heading, SeoHyun's looking like it's either going to float 5 mana this turn, or he's going to cube in a fairly weak spot for it. And neither of these things really seem that appealing to SeoHyun. I think that's what's making this such a tough turn. Do you cube or do you not cube? Because you want a lot of stats, you want a lot of taunts, but you don't want a lot of Ironwood Golems from your Hadronox. You want it to be the heavy hitters.
Yeah, but at the same time, speaking of stats, this Master Oakheart is coming down next turn, and that's going to be pulling a Dragon Hatcher, which is going to be pulling a Primordial Drake. So a lot of stats are coming in real quick.
Yeah, it doesn't have any tech for a one-attack minion. Sometimes that slot you see a 1/5 Poisonous Taunt.
Mm-hmm.
And
the Drakari Enchanter, I believe its name is.
Well, Drakari Enchanter is the double end turn.
Yeah.
So that one is the one that's quite rarely played. You know, sometimes I really like it, but it is just a 3-mana 1/5 on its own.
Yeah, when you draw it, it feels terrible.
Yeah, it's really bad when you draw it. And, you know, something like, you know, Lich King, for instance, not really bad when you draw it. So it's one of those things where it's a call you have to make. If you expect other Taunt Druid mirrors, I think it's quite an acceptable card. If you're not really expecting that much Taunt Druid, you probably just don't need a one-attack minion in the deck.
Dragon Hatcher is going to be pulling plenty of stats out anyway.
Yeah.
And Sleepy Dragon.
Like, how much better does your card really need to be? Like, that's really the big question, right?
Right.
Oh, no, I only got a 4/8 and a 2/4 that threatens to summon more stuff in a 5/5.
Right, and if he didn't already play the Oaken Summons and draw the Hadronox, it would have pulled one of those as well.
Yeah. Boo-hoo. What a tough life. Tarei's pushing a lot, though, and I think that this is really smart. You know, you need to eliminate Dragon Hatcher, but you need to seize damage when you can. Because, again, that armor total gets so large that Tarei's window of opportunity for Malagos combos will shut. So him using Branching Pass aggressively, foregoing Lich King, and trying to seize these damage turns, these are the only times he's going to have them. Yeah,
and another thing is, as we're talking about the time limit that Tarei's kind of on as the Taunt Druid engine gets going, is cards like Spreading Plague are basically just Frost Novas, because they're always going to be able to trade into the Spreading Plague.
Oh, yeah.
And so you're never going to get that much damage off with the Branching Pass unless it's this specific scenario correctly identifies it, and we just need to push as much damage as possible so we can get the Swipe Moonfire at the face before you can get that Hadronox online.
Yeah, you look at the way that Spreading Plague in Tarei's deck lines up against SeoHyun's. A Druid deck that doesn't run Spreading Plague because, you know, it's Taunt Druid. You don't want to summon a bunch of 1/5s, you want to summon a bunch of 4/12s.
Yep.
The Branching Pass on SeoHyun's side is often game-ending. It allows him to push past the Spreading Plague and then just have a ton of 5-attack stuff on board. On Tarei's side, it's either going to be armor, it's going to be card draw, or it's going to be whatever damage he can get, and that is the vastly preferred option. If you're having to draw or if you're having to armor, it's either a 4-mana turn or you're way deep into the game and you are about to die.
SeoHyun struggling a little bit to proceed with his engine because Tarei applied so much pressure, he had to waste an entire turn using removal to stop taking damage. So
yeah.
He opted to do that over playing a Sleepy Dragon. He opted to do that over tempoing out the Hydronox. He did that over, you know, doing some cube wild growth to try to get to that turn 10 a little bit quicker.
And that's
now a Lich King's coming down.
That's the pressure that ends up compounding when Tarei makes these aggressive maneuvers too. SeoHyun's hand is very clogged down, and he's in a really tough spot of being able to get it done. He really wants to take care of Lich King in this spot. It's one of those things where it's like you feel damned if you do, damned if you don't. Like, he's got to stop the offensive pressure, but at the same time, he's got to get his own offense going. Can't wait too long because he hasn't built up a ton of armor, and his hand is, you know, pretty limited to one card a turn right now. It's a pretty tough spot. I think that he can still win this one, but I'd say from this spot, I would give the advantage to Tarei.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, Naturalize came off the top, instantly almost dislocated his shoulder. He threw that out so quickly. And then went with the Hydronox over the Sleepy Dragon. Do you like that?
Yeah.
We only have 2 Ironwood Golems in the pool, though.
You got to get stuff rolling. That Hadronox is not dying. Tarei is not interested in killing that, and you need to get stuff. And so the last thing you want to do is have to commit a bunch of mana to using Hadronox. You want it in play so that way as soon as you draw a second Naturalize or as soon as you get enough in the pool, you are able to rip a Death Rattle effect on that Hadronox and summon an army. So the goal right now is find Branching Pass and then capitalize, because right now, again, the armor total was limited, so he has to be aware of the amount of damage that Tarei can get, and Branching Pass getting burned is a really bad time right now.
Oh, yeah. Definitely the preferred follow-up.
Look at his reaction.
Yeah, he was very upset. Fortunately, he didn't burn the Lich King, so that has potential to go into the pool of taunt minions, but I don't know if he's going to have time.
He's running out of time, and Twig is a pretty dead draw for Tarei because he knows that on the horizon is that wall of unending taunts that's going to be there.
Here's another thing we're not thinking about with the Branching Pass. We're thinking that's going to be, you know, +1 attack, +1 attack. But because the only taunts in the pool are the Ironwood Golems, if Tarei can do enough damage to the armor, without that branching path, he's not going to have enough armor to gain to attack with the Ironwood Golems.
I was thinking for SeoHyun, he would need the branching pass so he could gain 12 armor. Because Tarei's played Florist, and so SeoHyun knows what that means. It means that there's a Malagos coming. And what happens when there's a Malagos coming? It's a lot of damage. That's what you're expecting. And so you need to shut down the damage. Tarei, perfect here, recognizes that if he uses Anti-Magic Shell here, SeoHyun is not able to kill the Malagos this turn. So this gives Tarei time to have this weird giant explosive turn, maybe find the damage necessary to end this game. He has to take a big risk. So that's good for SeoHyun, but if that risk pays off, SeoHyun's in trouble.
This is something me and Frodan were talking about in the last game, or not the last series, where a Vicious Fledgling just went into a Druid and just ran away with the game because of how powerful Untargetable is against Druid. Faceless Manipulator off the top. You thought 614 Untargetable Malagos was good. Well, let's throw in another one for free.
Yeah, I mean, one of them is good. I do think
Plenty
that.
good. Some would say better than good.
It's great.
Superb.
SeoHyun's in trouble.
A lot of trouble.
A lot of trouble.
Can't kill off the Hydronox by trading it in.
Can use the Spellstone on it afterwards. And it can't Spellstone the Malagos right now, so what else is it doing?
He's cubing it. Making an army of 3/6s. By army, I mean 2. Oh, and a Primordial Drake.
Yeah, I like this turn from SeoHyun because if Tarei is going to pop off with some damage, it means he's going to pop a cube or he's going to pop a Hadronox. More taunts. More taunts. Just keep doing that.
Ooh.
Eventually, you hope to get there.
Now, he can pop both and then swipe.
Yeah, it's this is bad.
This kind of throws SeoHyun's game plan out the window. He's going to be able to Spellstone the Hydronox, Moonfire the cube. Oh, wait.
Do you want to Moonfire the cube?
Just leave the Hydronoxes up. Why not? I forgot there was Hydronoxes in the cube as well.
So you do that one.
Yep. Then,
because
that's
pops
good.
it.
Then
So-
you do that one because that's a lot of damage.
Yeah, and then you do that attack because that's a lot more damage. And then you do that because it's a lot more damage. And then you're looking at Ultimate Infestation in hand, which is a lot more damage.
That's
and
a lot of damage.
Suddenly it looks like SeoHyun is not in the game.
He's also out of cards.
And that's a branching pass, I believe? Nope. I
Nourish.
used one earlier. I remember now.
Yep.
Yeah, so Tarei, when he saw that second branching pass burn, that was his ticket to know this. He just needs to set up a big damage turn. That's why SeoHyun needed to find it, was if he had 12 more life in the situation, he might have the time to get there.
So he needs to clear 2 untargetable Malagoses.
That's not happening.
And heal above 5.
That's not happening.
Neither of those things are
Neither of
happening.
those things are happening.
That's a tall order. Sleepy Dragons have been sitting in the hand for quite some time.
Like the whole game? Yeah.
Sometimes.
It's a bit of time.
Yep.
It is Druid time, so it's a bit accelerated, but...
When you live for a couple hundred years, time just kind of blurs together.
I just heard that piano song where the guy's like, you only got 100 years to live, and it's like, do 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 do. That's all I could hear in my head when you said that. Tarei's gonna lock it up.
2 shiny old Malagoses. Ooh, how do you finish the game? With the big UI or a Moonfire?
It doesn't. They both do the same thing. One of them draws 5 cards.
One of them's Moonfire, cost 0.
Tarei gonna go 3 games to 1 over SeoHyun. SeoHyun, I think found himself in some pretty unfortunate spots. At times, 1 or 2 cards away from being able to pick up a game here and there. Maybe send this to game number 5. But you see the handshake. You see Tarei. Just kind of casual business. 5th and final round, and he's got himself a 5-0 record in match score. But SeoHyun still looking pretty good in this one. 4-1 overall.
Yeah, it's no 5-0, but when you're in day 1, honestly, it's like you're so good. You're in such a good spot to go to gate 2 and hopefully make that top 16 that